Jessica and I met 14 years ago. She was everything I thought I'd ever want in a partner. Kind, driven, and drop-dead gorgeous. For most of our marriage, I believed we had something others envied. We rarely fought, supported each other through tough times, and shared countless moments that felt like they were pulled from a rom-com. But looking back, perhaps I was wearing blinders. Perhaps I wanted to believe in a version of us that no longer existed, or maybe never did. Over the past few months, things started to feel off. It wasn't anything obvious at first, just little things, like how she'd laugh at her phone more often than at my jokes, or how she'd head out with friends and return hours later than planned, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, Jessica was always adept at making me feel like I was overthinking things. But one day, everything changed. It started when I was cleaning out the garage. Jessica had gone to the store to pick up a few things for dinner, and I figured I'd make myself useful. That's when I stumbled across a shoebox, hidden under a pile of old Christmas decorations. Inside were receipts, photos, and a small envelope addressed to her, but written in a handwriting I didn't recognize. My stomach dropped. The photos were blurry, as if they'd been taken quickly, but there was no mistaking who was in them. Jessica, and she wasn't alone. The man in the photos was tall, with dark hair and a smug expression I wanted to wipe off his face the moment I saw it. They were at some fancy restaurant I'd never heard of, and in one photo, they were holding hands across the table. In another, he had his arm around her waist as they walked to what I could only assume was a hotel. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, a love letter from this stranger. He called her my Jessica, talked about their plans, and how he couldn't wait for their future together. He even mentioned how much he admired her bravery for taking the first steps. What steps? What future? I sat there in the garage, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely powerless. My mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Was it something I did? Or was this just who she'd been all along, and I was too blind to see it? I didn't confront her right away. I wasn't ready. Instead, I started paying closer attention. Over the next few weeks, I noticed the same patterns. Nights out, mysterious phone calls, and her constant need to keep her phone glued to her side. I wanted to scream every time she smiled at me like everything was fine, but I kept my cool. I needed proof. I needed to know for sure before I made a move. Then came yesterday, the day that changed everything. Jessica had been acting distant all week, and I knew something was up. So, when she told me she'd be home late because she had a work meeting, I didn't buy it. I told her I had a meeting of my own, kissed her goodbye, and waited until she left. Then, I grabbed the tracker I'd hidden in her car and followed her. She drove to a cozy little cafe on the other side of town. I parked across the street and watched as she walked in, carrying a small gift bag. I couldn't see who she met up with from where I was, but it didn't matter. I already knew. When she left an hour later, she was smiling like a teenager in love. It made me sick. That night, I stayed up staring at the wall, trying to figure out what to do. Then it hit me. If she was going to keep lying, pretending like nothing was wrong, I'd give her a taste of what it felt like to have the rug pulled out from under her. The next morning, I took down the large wedding portrait that hung in our living room. It was her favorite. She always said it reminded her of how happy we were on that day. I replaced it with a blank canvas, leaving the hooks exposed like an empty reminder of what was no longer there. Then, I packed a small bag, left a note on the counter, and walked out. When Jessica came home that evening, carrying flowers of all things, I was waiting in the car across the street. I watched as she unlocked the door and stepped inside. Even from a distance, I could hear her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Then it happened. She must have noticed the missing portrait because she froze. I could see her silhouette through the curtains as she walked closer, standing there for what felt like forever. Her hand went up to her mouth, and even though I couldn't see her face, I knew she realized something was wrong. And this was just the beginning. I stayed outside in my car, heart pounding, as I watched Jessica stand frozen in the living room. I could only imagine the thoughts racing through her mind as she stared at the blank wall where our wedding portrait used to hang. A part of me wondered if she even understood the significance of what was missing, but deep down, I knew she did. That picture symbolized everything we had built, or at least what I thought we had built. A few moments later, I saw her rush toward the kitchen counter. I had left a note there, but it wasn't just any note. It was the first step in unraveling the truth. The note was simple and deliberate. Jessica, I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. There's so much I want to say, but I'm not sure where to begin. So, I left you a little something in the box by the couch. Open it when you're ready to talk. Mark. The box I mentioned wasn't just any box. It was a plain black gift box, tied with a crimson ribbon. Inside, I had placed a copy of the photos and the letter I found in the garage, along with the tracker I'd used to follow her. I didn't want to have some screaming match or let her try to gaslight me. I wanted her to see that I knew everything, and there was no way out of it. From my car, I could see her pacing back and forth near the couch. She hesitated before picking up the box. She untied the ribbon with shaky hands, and even from a distance, I saw the exact moment her knees buckled as she pulled out the contents. First the photos, then the letter, then the tracker. I watched as she stumbled back, clutching her chest like the air had been knocked out of her. My phone buzzed. It was her, of course. She was calling. I let it ring, and then it rang again and again. She left voicemail after voicemail, each one more frantic than the last. Please call me. Let me explain. I don't know where this came from, but it's not what it looks like. Why are you doing this? Just come home and we can talk. But I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a response, not yet. This time, I was in control, and she was going to sit with the weight of her lies. I waited until the house lights dimmed and she disappeared upstairs. Then, I drove to a nearby motel and checked in for the night. It wasn't glamorous. The walls were thin, and the bed smelled faintly of cigarettes, but I didn't care. I spent most of the night listening to her voicemails on repeat, trying to figure out if there was even a shred of sincerity in her words. There wasn't. The next morning, I decided it was time to escalate things. I wasn't going to let her brush this off as some misunderstanding. I wanted answers, and I wanted her to face the reality of what she had done. I texted her a single message. Meet me at the park bench where we had our first date. Noon. Don't be late. I chose that spot intentionally. It was where we had once shared dreams about growing old together, talking for hours about everything and nothing. I wanted her to feel the weight of the betrayal in a place that once meant so much to us. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting on the bench with her head in her hands. She looked up as I approached, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She had brought the black box with her, clutching it like it held the answers to fix everything. Please, she started as soon as I sat down. Let me explain. It's not what you think. Not what I think. I scoffed. You've been lying to me for months. I have the photos, the letter, the tracker. What part of this isn't what I think? She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she just sat there, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in years, she looked completely powerless. It was a stark contrast to the confident, put-together woman I thought I knew. I want the truth, Jessica, I said, my voice low and steady. All of it. Right here, right now. She hesitated, looking around as if searching for an escape, but there wasn't one. Not this time. Finally, she whispered, it was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I laughed bitterly. A mistake, Jessica? Mistakes don't last for months. Mistakes don't involve secret love letters and hotel rendezvous. So try again. She flinched at the harshness of my tone, but didn't argue. Instead, she buried her face in her hands and started sobbing. I don't know what to say, she choked out. I don't know how to fix this. That's the thing, Jessica, I said, standing up. You can't fix this. You broke something that can't be repaired. I left her there on that bench, clutching the black box like it was the only thing tethering her to reality. I didn't look back as I walked away. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, and a small, unexpected sense of relief. For the first time in months, the lies were out in the open. Now, it was time for me to decide what came next. When I walked away from Jessica at the park, I thought I'd feel some sense of closure. Instead, I spent the rest of the day pacing around my motel room, replaying our conversation in my head. Her tears, her excuses, her refusal to tell the full truth. It all left a sour taste in my mouth. She still wasn't owning up to anything, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized she wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry she got caught. That night, I decided it was time to dig deeper. If she wasn't going to give me the truth, I'd find it myself. I started with the letter. The guy, her lover, had signed his name at the bottom, Ryan. That was all I had to go on, but it was enough. Using the receipt from the shoebox, I traced the fancy restaurant they'd gone to, which conveniently listed the exact date of their dinner. A quick call to the place, posing as someone who had lost a credit card on that same night, gave me the name of the man who had paid the bill, Ryan Harper. Bingo. Next, I checked social media. It didn't take long to find him. His profile was public, and he seemed to enjoy flaunting his wealth. Photos of luxury vacations, flashy cars, and expensive dinners filled his feed. And then there were the photos with Jessica. Nothing to incriminate, just group pictures at work functions and team-building retreats. But it was enough to confirm my suspicions. Ryan wasn't just her lover. He was her boss. It all made sense now. The late nights at the office, the sudden work trips, the expensive gifts she couldn't quite explain. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was using our marriage as a cover for her affair with this guy. But here's where things got interesting. I scrolled further down his profile and found a post from 2 weeks ago. It was a picture of him at the same park bench where I'd confronted Jessica, with a caption that read, "Big moves ahead." Feeling unstoppable, the arrogance practically oozed off the screen. My blood boiled. He wasn't just stealing my wife. He was flaunting it like some kind of trophy. The next morning, I called Jessica. She answered on the first ring, her voice shaky but hopeful. "Are you ready to talk?" she asked. "Not yet," I said coldly, "but I have some questions. Tell me about Ryan." There was a long pause on the other end. Finally, she whispered, "How do you know about him?" "I know everything, Jessica. I know he's your boss. I know he's the one you've been sneaking around with. So don't play dumb. Just tell me how long it's been going on." She sighed, and I could hear her trying to hold back tears. "It started 6 months ago," she admitted. "It wasn't supposed to be anything serious. It just happened." "Stop saying, 'it just happened.'" I snapped. "You don't accidentally fall into an affair for 6 months. You made a choice, over and over again." "You're right," she said softly. "I made a mistake." There it was again, that word, mistake, like she was trying to downplay the entire thing. My patience was wearing thin. "Why him?" I asked. "What did he have that I didn't?" She hesitated before answering. "I don't know," she said finally. "He made me feel special, like I was important, like I mattered." Her words cut deeper than I expected. I wanted to yell, to tell her how much she mattered to me, how I had spent years building a life for us, sacrificing my own needs to make her happy. But instead, I just hung up. I couldn't listen to her excuses anymore. That afternoon, I decided to pay Ryan a visit. I wasn't planning on doing anything crazy. I just wanted to look him in the eye and see the man who thought he could steal my wife and get away with it. I drove to his office building, a sleek glass structure in the heart of downtown. I walked into the lobby, pretending to be a delivery man, and asked for his office number. The receptionist, clearly distracted by her phone, pointed me in the right direction without a second glance. When I reached his office, the door was slightly ajar. I could hear him on the phone, his voice smooth and confident. "Yeah, she's in love with me," he was saying. "She just hasn't admitted it yet. Don't worry, I've got everything under control." I pushed the door open, and his face went pale when he saw me standing there. "Can I help you?" he asked, trying to sound composed, but I could see the panic in his eyes. "You must be Ryan," I said, stepping into the room. "I'm Jessica's husband." He blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Look, man, I don't know what you've heard, but—" "Save it," I interrupted. "I know exactly who you are and what you've been doing. I just came here to tell you one thing. You've made a huge mistake." His smug demeanor faltered, and for a moment, I saw fear flicker across his face. But before he could respond, I turned and walked out. I didn't need to hear his excuses. I just wanted him to know that I wasn't some clueless husband he could walk all over. That evening, I went back to the house to pick up a few things. Jessica was waiting for me, her face pale and her eyes red from crying. "Please," she said as I walked through the door, "don't leave. We can fix this." "Fix what?" I asked. "You didn't just break my trust, Jessica, you destroyed it. And for what? Some guy who thinks you're just another notch on his belt." She broke down, falling to her knees and sobbing. But I didn't feel sorry for her, not anymore. I grabbed my things, turned to her one last time, and said, "You made your choice. Now you have to live with it." And just like that, I walked out. But something told me this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Walking out of the house that night felt like shedding a skin that had been suffocating me for months. But as I drove back to the motel, a cold reality settled in. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Jessica wasn't the kind of person to let things go quietly, and I could already feel the storm brewing. The next morning, my phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages from her. I didn't bother answering. I knew her well enough to predict the cycle: apologies, excuses, guilt trips, and finally, anger. Sure enough, when I finally checked my messages, her tone had shifted. One text read, "If you're just going to run away, then maybe I'll stop trying." Another, "You can't just abandon me like this. You're being a coward." That word, coward, stung more than I wanted to admit. It wasn't true, at least I didn't think it was, but it planted a seed of doubt in my mind. Was I handling this the right way? Should I have stayed and confronted her more directly? But every time I pictured her face full of crocodile tears and hollow promises, I knew I'd made the right call. Still, I couldn't stop myself from wondering what she was doing. Was she scrambling to clean up the mess she'd made? Reaching out to Ryan to figure out her next move? Or maybe she was genuinely sitting in our empty house, finally realizing what she'd thrown away? But the truth turned out to be far more shocking than anything I could have imagined. Later that afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before answering, half expecting it to be Jessica calling from someone else's phone. But the voice on the other end wasn't hers. "Hi, is this, Jessica's husband?" a nervous-sounding man asked. "Who's asking?" I replied, already feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. "This is, Ryan," he said, clearing his throat. "I think we need to talk." I clenched my fist so hard my knuckles turned white. Of all the people to call me, he was the last person I wanted to hear from. "You've got some nerve," I said through gritted teeth. "What the hell do you want?" "Look, I know I'm probably the last person you want to talk to right now," he said, his voice wavering. "But there's something you need to know. It's about Jessica." I almost hung up right then and there, but something about his tone stopped me. It wasn't smug or condescending like I'd expected. He sounded scared. "Spit it out," I said, my patience wearing thin. "She's not who you think she is," he said. I thought I knew her too, but he hesitated, and I could hear him pacing on the other end of the line. "Look, I can't explain this over the phone. Can we meet somewhere, please?" The last thing I wanted was to sit face to face with the man who had ruined my marriage, but curiosity got the better of me. "Fine," I said. "Where?" We agreed to meet at a diner on the edge of town. It was a quiet, out-of-the-way spot where I wouldn't have to worry about running into anyone I knew. When I walked in, Ryan was already sitting in a corner booth, nervously stirring a cup of coffee. He looked different in person, less confident, more fidgety. His tailored suit and expensive watch didn't match the panicked expression on his face. "What do you want?" I asked as I slid into the booth across from him. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers, sliding them across the table to me. "This," he said, "you need to see this." I glanced at the top page. It was a financial statement detailing multiple bank transfers over the past 6 months. All of them were from my personal accounts to Jessica's. My chest tightened as I flipped through the pages, each one confirming the same pattern. She had been siphoning money from me. Our savings, my retirement fund, even the emergency account I'd set up years ago. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, my voice rising. "I didn't know she was doing this," Ryan said quickly, holding up his hands. "She told me you were okay with it, that you guys had some kind of arrangement. I didn't think twice about it until last week when I overheard her talking to someone else." "Someone else?" I echoed, my stomach sinking. He nodded. "Another guy? She called him baby and said you were out of the picture now. She told him everything was set for their trip to Cancun." Cancun. The word hit me like a freight train. Jessica had been planning to run off with someone else, using my money to fund their little getaway. And Ryan? He was just a stepping stone, a pawn in whatever twisted game she was playing. I sat back in the booth, the weight of it all crashing down on me. For months, I'd been blaming Ryan, thinking he was the one who had stolen Jessica from me. But now I realized the truth. Jessica wasn't the victim, and she wasn't even just the cheater. She was the mastermind. "I'm sorry," Ryan said, breaking the silence. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I thought, save it." I snapped, cutting him off. "You're not innocent in this. You knew she was married, and you still went after her. So don't sit here and act like you're the victim." He looked down at his coffee, ashamed. "You're right," he said quietly. "But I'm telling you this because you deserve to know. She's dangerous, man. She's not who you think she is." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My mind was racing, trying to piece everything together. Jessica hadn't just betrayed me. She'd used me, manipulated me, and robbed me blind. And now she was planning to disappear with some new guy, leaving me with nothing. As I left the diner, Ryan called after me. "Be careful," he said. "She's not done with you yet." His words echoed in my mind as I drove back to the motel. For the first time since this all started, I felt truly afraid, not just of what Jessica had done, but of what she might do next. I sat in my car in the motel parking lot, staring at the financial documents Ryan had given me. My hands were trembling, and my mind was a swirling mess of anger, disbelief, and humiliation. Jessica hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She'd systematically dismantled everything I'd worked for. She'd robbed me of my money, my dignity, and any illusion I had left of the life we built together. But there was one thing she hadn't taken from me yet: control. If she thought she could walk away from this unscathed, she was sorely mistaken. That night, I decided to call my bank. The customer service agent was polite at first, but as I started explaining the unauthorized transfers from my account, her tone shifted to one of quiet concern. "Sir, these transfers were made from your joint account," she said. "Your wife has equal access to those funds." "I didn't authorize those transfers," I said firmly. "There's no way she can legally take money from my retirement account without my permission." There was a pause on the other end. "Actually, sir," she continued, "there was a document filed about 6 months ago granting her power of attorney over your accounts. It's on record here." My heart dropped. "What document? I never signed anything like that." "Would you like me to email you a copy for review?" she asked. "Yes, immediately," I said, my voice tight with rage. Within minutes, the document landed in my inbox. As I opened it, my stomach churned. The signature at the bottom, my signature, wasn't mine. It was a crude forgery, but apparently convincing enough to fool the bank. Jessica had forged my name, giving herself the legal authority to drain our accounts. I called a lawyer the next morning. I explained everything: her infidelity, the forged documents, the stolen money. "This is fraud," I said. "I want to take her to court. I want her to pay for this." The lawyer, a calm and collected man named Paul, nodded as he took notes. "You have a strong case," he said. "But if what you're telling me is true, this isn't just a civil matter. This could be criminal." Criminal. The word hung in the air like a dark cloud. I hadn't even considered the possibility of pressing charges against Jessica, but now it seemed like the only option. If she thought she could take everything from me and walk away without consequences, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. I spent the next 2 days gathering every piece of evidence I could find: the photos, the letter, the financial records, and the forged document. All painted a clear picture of Jessica's betrayal. Meanwhile, I ignored her texts and calls. I needed her to stew in her own guilt, or more likely, her own panic. On the third day, she showed up at the motel. I heard the knock on my door just as I was finishing a call with Paul. When I looked through the peephole, there she was, Jessica, looking disheveled and desperate. I debated whether to open the door, but curiosity got the better of me. "Why are you here?" I asked, keeping my voice cold and detached. She looked at me with wide, tear-filled eyes. "Please, can we talk? I can't do this anymore." "Do what?" I asked, folding my arms. "Lie? Steal? Cheat? Which part are you tired of, Jessica?" Her lip trembled, and she looked down at her feet. "I know I screwed up," she said, "but I didn't mean for it to get this far. I don't know what happened." "You don't know what happened?" I said, my voice rising. "You forged my signature, emptied my accounts, and planned to run off with God knows who to Cancun. Don't stand there and act like you don't know what you've done." Her eyes snapped up to meet mine, and for the first time, I saw something shift in her expression. The tears dried up, replaced by a flicker of defiance. "You were never there for me," she said, her voice sharp. "All you ever cared about was work." I felt invisible, like I didn't even matter. "Don't you dare try to blame this on me," I said, stepping closer. "I worked my ass off to give us a good life. Everything we had, everything you threw away, I built it. You had a choice, Jessica. You chose this." Her face crumpled again, and she fell to her knees, sobbing. "I don't want to lose you," she cried. "Please, we can fix this. We can start over." I shook my head, the anger boiling in my chest. "There's no starting over, Jessica. Not after what you've done." I pulled a manila envelope from the desk and handed it to her. "This is what's going to happen," I said. "Inside, you'll find divorce papers. Sign them." If you refuse, I'll take everything to court, and trust me, once the judge sees what you've done, you'll walk away with nothing." She stared at the envelope like it was a venomous snake. "You can't be serious," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm dead serious," I said. "You made your bed, Jessica. Now you get to lie in it." That night, I received a call from Paul. "I have some news," he said. "I spoke to the district attorney's office, and they're very interested in pursuing charges for the forgery and financial fraud. They'll need you to provide a formal statement, but if you're willing to move forward, they can file the charges as early as next week." I hung up the phone and stared out the window, my mind racing. Jessica had betrayed me in ways I never thought possible, but now I had the power to fight back. She thought she could control the narrative, but she was about to find out that actions have consequences. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope, not for us, but for myself. I wasn't the broken, powerless man she thought I was. And as far as I was concerned, this was just the beginning. The following week was a whirlwind of preparation, confrontation, and mounting tension. Jessica's betrayal had left me with little but my pride, and even that felt like it was hanging by a thread. Yet, with every passing day, I could feel something stirring inside me, a growing determination to reclaim my life and ensure she faced the consequences of what she'd done. Jessica, to her credit or lack thereof, signed the divorce papers within 2 days of our last encounter. I suspect she believed that by cooperating, she could soften my resolve, but if that was her plan, it backfired spectacularly. The day after she signed the papers, I received an email from my lawyer, Paul. Attached was the formal filing for the divorce, along with the fraud charges we had discussed. Paul had coordinated with the district attorney's office, and as of that morning, Jessica was officially under investigation for forgery and financial misconduct. When I got the email, I couldn't help but smile. It wasn't a happy smile, not the kind that comes from joy, but the grim satisfaction of seeing justice begin to take shape. I forwarded the email to Jessica with a short message. "You wanted to talk? Let's see what the DA has to say." It didn't take long for her to respond. She called me within minutes, her voice trembling with panic. "What did you do?" she demanded. "You're trying to ruin me." "No, Jessica," I said calmly. "You ruined yourself. I'm just making sure you don't get away with it." Later that day, I got a call from an unexpected source, Jessica's mother, Susan. We'd always gotten along well enough, but she had a habit of staying out of our personal matters, so when her number flashed on my screen, I knew something was up. "Hi, Mark," she said, her voice tight. "I'm not sure what's going on between you and Jessica, but she just showed up at my house in tears. She's saying you're trying to have her arrested. Is that true?" I sighed, rubbing my temples. "Susan, do you have any idea what your daughter has been doing? She forged my signature, stole thousands of dollars from me, and planned to run off with another man. I'm not trying to have her arrested. I'm making sure she's held accountable for her actions." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I didn't know," Susan admitted. "She didn't tell me any of that. She just said you were being unreasonable, that you were overreacting." "Overreacting?" I snapped. "She destroyed our marriage and left me with nothing. How would you react if someone did that to you?" Susan didn't respond right away, but when she did, her tone was softer. "Mark, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I'll talk to her. Maybe I can get through to her." "Good luck," I said bitterly. "You'll need it." The next few days were quiet, or so I thought. Jessica had gone radio silent, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe that she had finally accepted the reality of her situation. But that illusion was shattered when I received a knock on my motel door late one evening. When I opened it, I was met by 2 police officers. "Are you Mark Anderson?" one of them asked. "Yes," I replied, my stomach sinking. "What's this about?" "We're here to serve you with a restraining order," the officer said, handing me a stack of papers. "Your wife, Jessica Anderson, has filed a complaint alleging harassment and threats." I stared at the papers, my mind reeling. "What? That's ridiculous. I haven't even spoken to her since." "We're not here to debate the merits of the complaint," the officer interrupted. "This is just a temporary order. You'll have the opportunity to contest it in court." As they walked away, I stood in the doorway, clutching the papers in disbelief. This was her next move, trying to paint herself as the victim and me as the aggressor. It was a desperate, pathetic attempt to regain control, but it still stung. After everything she had done, she was now trying to make me out to be the bad guy. The next morning, I called Paul and explained the situation. He assured me that the restraining order was likely a tactic to complicate the divorce proceedings and wouldn't hold up in court. "We'll fight it," he said confidently. "Just stick to the facts and keep your head down. Don't give her anything to use against you." Despite his reassurances, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of her schemes. Jessica had always been manipulative, but now she was playing a dangerous game, one that could backfire spectacularly. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I received another call. This time, it was from one of Jessica's coworkers. "Mark, I don't know if I should be calling you, but I thought you should know what's going on," the woman said, her voice low and hesitant. "Jessica's been telling people at the office that you've been stalking her, that you're dangerous." I felt like the ground was falling out from under me. "Why would she do that?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I think she's trying to get ahead of the investigation," the woman said. "Word's been spreading about the fraud charges, and people are starting to ask questions. She's panicking." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. It was one thing to betray me in private, but now she was actively trying to destroy my reputation. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about who I was as a person. "Thank you for letting me know," I said finally. "I appreciate it." That night, as I sat in my motel room, I realized something important. Jessica wasn't just trying to save herself. She was trying to bury me in the process. But she had underestimated one crucial thing. She had left a paper trail, and I had the truth on my side. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. After the restraining order and the revelation that Jessica was smearing my name at her workplace, I realized I needed to act quickly and decisively. The gloves were off now. She wasn't just trying to protect herself. She was actively destroying my reputation, and I wasn't going to let it slide. My lawyer, Paul, and I strategized our next moves. The restraining order hearing was scheduled in a week, and in the meantime, he advised me to stay calm and gather evidence that contradicted her claims. The good news: Jessica's recklessness had left plenty of breadcrumbs. First, I requested phone records, emails, and text exchanges through legal channels to prove I hadn't harassed or threatened her. Paul also suggested subpoenaing her workplace for any complaints she'd filed against me, knowing full well there wouldn't be any legitimate documentation to back her lies. Every step brought me closer to dismantling the house of cards she'd built. A few days later, I received an unexpected text from the same coworker who had tipped me off earlier. It read, "You're not going to believe this, but Jessica just called out sick after an argument with Ryan. She's losing it. You need to hear this." Attached to the message was an audio recording. With shaking hands, I played it. The recording was muffled, but clear enough to make out Ryan's voice, sharp with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Ryan hissed. "You told me you had everything under control, Jessica. Now I'm being dragged into your mess because of your lies." Jessica's reply was a mix of desperation and venom. "I didn't lie to you, Ryan. I told you I needed time. Mark's trying to ruin me. You don't understand. He's dangerous." Ryan laughed bitterly. "Dangerous? The guy hasn't done a damn thing to you except catch you cheating. I'm starting to think you're the dangerous one here." I paused the recording, my mind racing. This was the break I needed. Not only did this expose her lies about me being a threat, but it also revealed cracks in her relationship with Ryan. She wasn't just losing control, she was unraveling completely. At the hearing a few days later, Jessica showed up with her usual bravado, but I could see the cracks in her armor. Her once flawless confidence was faltering under the weight of her own deceit. I presented the evidence we'd gathered, my clean phone records, the lack of complaints at her workplace, and the audio recording of her argument with Ryan. When the judge played the recording, Jessica's face turned ashen. She tried to interject, but the judge silenced her with a glare. "Mrs. Anderson," the judge said sternly, "it's clear from this evidence that your claims against your husband are baseless. Not only is this restraining order denied, but I'm also forwarding this case for review regarding potential perjury charges." Jessica looked like she might faint. For the first time, I felt a flicker of satisfaction, not revenge, but justice. She'd played dirty, and it had backfired spectacularly. After the hearing, I walked out of the courtroom feeling lighter than I had in months. But deep down, I knew Jessica wasn't done. The storm wasn't over yet. It was just gathering strength. The courtroom victory was a pivotal moment, but I knew Jessica wouldn't go down quietly. For the next few days, I stayed on high alert. Every text, Every email, every interaction felt like it could be her next move. I was exhausted, but I wasn't about to let my guard down. 2 days after the hearing, I got a call from Paul. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "Mark, something new has come up. The DA's office just received an anonymous tip about Jessica's activities. It seems she's been moving money into an offshore account." My heart sank. "Offshore? Are you serious?" "Very," he replied. "This changes everything. If she's been hiding assets, the financial fraud case against her just got a whole lot stronger. But there's something else." The tip came with documents. "Documents?" I asked, confused. "Yes," Paul said. "There are records showing she's been withdrawing money not only from your accounts, but also from her employer, Ryan's company." I nearly dropped my phone. She's been stealing from him too? Apparently, and from the looks of it, Ryan didn't know until now. This might explain why he's been distancing himself from her. That same evening, I got another unexpected call, this time from Ryan himself. I debated whether to pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want?" I asked flatly. "Look, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from," he started, his tone uncharacteristically nervous. "But we need to talk. Jessica's gone off the rails." "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my composure. "She's been stealing from my company," Ryan admitted. "Tens of thousands of dollars. I just found out, and I've already reported it to the authorities. She's about to have a lot more to worry about than just you." For a moment, I was speechless. This wasn't just about me anymore. Jessica's actions had spiraled out of control, leaving chaos in their wake. "So why are you calling me?" I finally asked. "Because she's blaming you," Ryan said bluntly. "She told me you set her up, that all of this is some elaborate scheme to ruin her life. I don't believe her anymore, but you should know, she's desperate. Desperate people do stupid things." The next day, everything came to a head. I was sitting in my motel room, going over the latest developments with Paul, when I heard a loud knock at the door. My stomach tightened. When I opened it, 2 police officers were standing there. "Mr. Anderson, we need you to come with us," one of them said. "We have questions regarding a recent burglary." "A burglary?" I repeated, stunned. "What are you talking about?" The officer explained that Jessica had filed a police report, claiming I'd broken into our house and stolen personal belongings, including jewelry and electronics. My initial reaction was shock, but it quickly gave way to anger. This was her last-ditch effort to turn the tables, and it was pathetic. Luckily, I had been meticulous about keeping receipts and timestamps during my time away. My lawyer immediately provided proof of my alibi, including surveillance footage from the motel where I'd been staying. The police realized her story didn't add up, and within hours, they shifted their focus back to Jessica. The final blow came a week later. Jessica was arrested on charges of forgery, financial fraud, and embezzlement. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and even her usual charm couldn't save her. As she was led away in handcuffs, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and a deep sense of finality. She had destroyed everything we'd built together, but she had also destroyed herself in the process. There was no joy in seeing her like this, but there was closure. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. Now, as I sit here, I'm not sure what the future holds. The past few months have been the hardest of my life, but they've also taught me a lot about resilience, about standing up for myself, and about the importance of truth. Jessica's betrayal was a wake-up call, and though it nearly broke me, it also set me free. To anyone reading this, know that you're stronger than you think. Life has a way of throwing us into the fire, but sometimes it's in that fire that we find our strength. Thank you for listening.